Next videos we're going to be looking at interest and mixture problems. There are two specific types of applications that we're going to find in section 11.5. This first one is an interest problem. Meredith has money in two savings accounts. One rate is 8% and the other is 10%. If she has $200 more in the 10% account, how much is invested at 8% if the total annual interest is $101? Okay, so try to get our mind wrapped around that. She's got two savings accounts, two different interest rates. The 8%, the 10% has $200 more in it, and the total annual interest that she makes is $101. So if we take a look at the interest formula that we've looked at before, I equals PRT, interest is principal times rate times time. This formula can be reduced down because this word annual right here is the interest over 1 year. So we're not interested in any other time period, just 1 year. So we want t equal to 1 to be substituted in for that t, and so this formula reduces down to interest equals principal times rate. Okay, so we don't need the factor of time. Now, to start our problem, now that we know our formula, we need to define the variables. And I'm going to go ahead and use x and y as my two variables. And they have to be the two things that we don't know. Now, at the end of this problem, the last sentence says if the total, how much is invested at 8%. So that's what they're trying to get us to find. So that's going to be the first variable. Okay, how much is invested at 8%? So x is the amount invested at 8%, and y is going to be similar, even though it's not asking for it here in the question. The other thing we don't know is the amount invested in the 10%. Okay, so those are our two variables. Now we're going to set up another table like we did in the problems in the previous section, and each row of our table, this just organizes our thoughts. Each row of the table is going to be a different account. So we'll do the 8% account and the 10% account. Oh, can't draw that straight. That's a little bit lopsided, that's alright. Okay, and then each column of the table is going to be a principal, a rate, and an interest. Okay, so that gives us our three quantities: principal, rate, and interest. And so if we look at the principal column, the principal for the 8%, principal is the amount invested. That, of course, is our unknown, x. And the principal for the 10% is our unknown, y. The rate at each percent is the percent, but we got to change them to a decimal form. So if I change the 8% to a decimal, it's 0.08, and 10% is 0.10, or you could just write 0.1. The interest is the product of those two, and so the interest at 8% is 0.08x, and at 10% it is 0.1y. Okay? Of course, I'm just using 0.1 instead of 0.10. Alright, and so the next thing we're going to look at is setting up our equations. We need our system. This just organizes our thoughts here. I have one sentence that says if she has $200 more in the 10% account. So there's $200 more in the 10% account, which means if you take the 10%, if you start with the 8% and add $200 to it, you'll get the 10%. So that means the 10% must be equal to the 8% plus 200. Okay? So there's $200 more in the 10% account. If you take the 8% plus 200, you'll get the 10%. The second equation deals with the interests. Notice that the total interest is $101. Well, here I have the interest from the 8%, here I have the interest from the 10%. The total, which would be adding them up, should be $101. So if I do 0.08x plus 0.1y, that should equal $101. Okay. So now I'm going to just go ahead and solve this system. And to do that, I'm going to do a substitution method where I substitute, since I already have y solved for, I'm going to substitute the x plus 200 into the y in the other equation. And so I'll rewrite this: 0.08x plus 0.1 times that new expression equals 101, and the new expression becomes x plus 200. Then I need to distribute my 0.1. It's 0.08x plus 0.1x. Now 0.1 times 200 is the same as 10% of 200. That gives me 20 equals 101. And then I combine like terms. This becomes 0.18x, right? 0.08 and 0.1. And I'm going to subtract the 20 from both sides just to simplify this up. That gives me an 81. So now we're going to free up the x. I've got to divide both sides by 0.18. And I'm going to do that arithmetic over on the side here. So 0.18 into 81, if I move the decimal twice on the bottom, I move the decimal twice on the top. This would be the same as 18 into 8,100. Okay, just move both decimals over twice. And so 18 into 81 will go 4 times. 4 times 18 ends up being 72. Do the subtraction, that's a 9, bring down the 0. 18 goes into 95 times with a 0. Bring down the 0, 18 goes into 0 times, and our remainder is 0. So this works out exactly 450. So x equals $450, and that is the amount asked for in the question when they say how much is invested at 8%. Okay, so the answer to my question is $450 is invested at 8%. Now, if we wanted to find the amount invested at the 10%, which isn't asked for but might be in another problem, we would just take that 450, add the 200 to it, and the y would end up being 450 plus 200 is $650. So you could find that amount as well. Okay.